to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you. And we'll move on to item number 3 on the agenda, and that is public comment. No one has approached me or the clerk to provide public comment, so we'll move on to the next item, approval of the minutes of the July 18th, 2024 Executive Committee meeting minutes, and they were in your packet. What is your pleasure? Motion by Supervisor Drabek. Is there a second? Second by Vice Chair Dickinson. Any discussion on the minutes as presented? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion to approve the July 18th, 2024 Executive Committee meeting minutes signify by saying aye. Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried and is unanimous. Thank you. We'll move on to item number 5, policy issue and potential committee determination, discussion regarding the 2025 annual budget development and policy recommendations from the committee regarding review of the mandatory discretionary program document and discussion on rates and fees. Any discussion from any of the executive committee members? This has been on the agenda. It's been on each of the standing committees' agendas for feedback and update to provide to the administrator as he begins in earnest, the difficult portion of preparing the budget. Okay. We'll move on to operational functions required by statute, ordinance, resolution, and/or policy. Under item 6A, a discussion and possible action by the executive committee. I wanted to have a discussion with the executive committee. I've had a couple of requests by various supervisors that will be attending the WCA annual conference in September. In fact, the conference ends, first off, it's held in La Crosse from the 20th to the 23rd in La Crosse, ending at about 12:30, 1 o'clock on the 23rd. We have our board meeting scheduled for 6 p.m. that evening, and so some individuals that have requested, it's about a 3-hour drive. Is there a possibility of moving that meeting to a different date? And so I wanted to, rather than just make that decision arbitrary, I wanted to bring it up to discussion because executive committee, also a large number of executive committee members are going to be in attendance of that WCA annual conference. So I throw it out for discussion. Vice Chair Dickinson, please.
Just wanted to clarify the dates. It's 22nd to 24th, and our meeting is on the 24th.
Correct. Okay.
Thank you. Is there a possibility to combine the educational and regular meeting the previous Thursday?
That's a possibility.
I know there's some budget questions, perhaps, but
throw it out for discussion. I'm not sure exactly. At this point, it's a little bit of ahead of time as far as agenda items and/or budget items that may be there. I think there's some significant things from HR Finance coming forward, but I throw it out for discussion. Minister Leonard, thoughts?
I'll take a look. On the budget calendar to see what, if anything, we need. I think that's from the county staff perspective, certainly a rational way to approach it. I'll do some looking as you further discuss it. And Mike, if you think of anything, let me know or let them know as well.
Other thoughts? Supervisor Marash, please. Oh, okay. Supervisor Drabek.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just wondering about even if we just move it back an hour that day, but the people getting off the conference are probably tired, so I get that. But I was just thinking if you dropped it back an hour, that should give them adequate time to get here.
clearly a possibility also. So again, I didn't want to make that decision without running it past exec and get their thoughts and feedback. Supervisor Robinson, please.
Well, it would materially affect the Human Resources Finance Property Committee meeting. We would have the same issue meeting at 3 that day. We could look at a different day, but it's always hard to move these around and get people there, but whatever you decide.
Administrator Leonard, please.
And I hesitate to say it, I put something out in the world and the opposite will happen, but I don't have anything right now on my list, knock on a wood product, that is anything pressing for September. I consulted the budget calendar, and there's certainly a lot, as Chair Gibbs referenced, there's a lot of work being done on the staff side relative to preparing and drafting the budget and the budget message. But I don't believe there's any action that the county board needs to take at its September meeting relative to the budget. So from that perspective right now, perhaps it does make sense to schedule your Thursday county board meeting to see what the agenda items are and take action on as many things as is needed. And then there may be items that you could just postpone until your October meeting, just as a thought.
Supervisor Robinson?
Then we would need to move HR Finance that Thursday as well.
Yeah, depending on whether or not you had items to get there.
That needed to
Yeah.
get to the board that month, right? Do you want to, well, I guess tentatively then is, if there's consensus, we'll tentatively schedule the Thursday meeting to be the voters' meeting, unless we have significant issues that HR Finance is challenged with creating a quorum on that Thursday also at 3 o'clock. So I'll have HR Finance take the question up on Tuesday, this next Tuesday, and ensure that we'll have a quorum on that Thursday meeting so that any items that need to go to the board in September from HR Finance is able to do that. Any objection to having only one meeting in September? Okay. That's what we'll do. We'll move on to item number 6B, discussion possible action by exec to forward to county board for approval. Final resolution regarding unconditional county guarantee for its pro rata share of intergovernmental agreement and taxable revenue bond financing for Bug Tussle 2 LLC project. I've put this on to see if there's any unanswered questions by the exec committee, understanding that there's multiple different things involved in that project, and how and what that all implies, and whether there's questions or unanswered questions by executive committee members on that project. Okay, Supervisor Robinson, please.
I'd just like to point out that Scott Feld from Bug Tussle is here to answer any of those questions. I think we put together frequently asked questions that tried to address most of the concerns that we heard at the during the initial resolution, and he could answer or give you updates.
There'll also be a presentation about historic efforts in this county at the full board as far as what has been done dating back all the way to 2009 as far as trying to improve and expand broadband in the rural area, and that will be presented in a PowerPoint by the chair of the Broadband Task Force this evening. and also, also try to answer any questions in regards. But I wanted to get the consensus of the executive committee if there's questions that are unanswered as it stands right now, because we have the opportunity with Scott here to be able to hopefully ask directly those questions directly to Scott. Questions by the exec committee? Supervisor Arstead, please.
I'm just a little confused. The fact sheet from John Robinson stated that we had agreed to a $3 million loan in March 2022 with terms to be approved at a later date. And I was searching through the resolution for 21-22, and I could only see something on there with the dollar amount of $175. Let me say that again. $100,042,175 to Bug Tussle.
$142,175. There you go.
Oh, see, that's why I'm not on HR Finance. Just to be
John?
truthful.
So
Supervisor Robinson, please.
let me, actually, the $142,000 was based on a $235 per passing subsidy in 636 passings. And so we had pledged that toward others. We had $933,000 toward Frontier and $70,000 toward Serenity. Serenity didn't receive a grant, so obviously that wasn't funded. But in the resolution itself, if you look at I'm trying to pull up the resolution, there was language in the resolution that read, now therefore be it resolved, the Marathon County Human Resources Finance Property Committee, the Marathon County Executive Committee, the Marathon County Board authorize county officials to make available low-interest loans to PSC grant applicants whose proposed use of the grant funds will benefit Marathon County for the non-PSC and non-county share of these projects under the terms and the conditions as defined in the Marathon County Broadband Task Force. That is the language that drives the loan. And then if you look at their grant application and their submittal, they put in the grant application the pledged contributions, Marathon County loan to Bug Tussle for the difference between the 3 million and the 142 or 2,857,825. I'll be covering that tonight. But that is the language that is driving the action. And I think it was that discussion, and we had a discussion internally as to whether or not that language was adequate with Corporation Council and others at that time, and we felt as if that allowed for the loan, but bringing that back to the county board.
So to give a little more context, so initially HR Finance offered potentially to use $3 million worth of ARPA funding to provide $147,000 forgivable loan, and then the balance of that $3 million was a loan to Bug Tussle that would be repaid similar to the repayment of the initial $25 million original project. And this was on a grant application by Bug Tussle for the Leather Camp area that was last mile. So the bigger project is Middle Mile, which connects the Tower Ring in the county. The other project is a separate project that was a PSC grant application for $3 million, well, in essence, $3 million of PSC funding. And then the county authorized $3 million, up to $3 million in a loan, of which $142,000 was forgivable because it met the criteria of what we had offered of each of the unserved or underserved residents that were going to be passed as a forgivable portion from, and initially it was thought that we were going to utilize ARPA funding to do that. What we found out later was that ARPA was not available because it's a loan and it was coming back to the county in dollars and cents and didn't meet the criteria of what the federal had spelled out as far as availability and use for ARPA funding. And so that's what led to now the $3 million request that is being potentially discussed as part of this project. Does that, hopefully, Lance, you've got
Sure,
additional
just,
content?
and again, not delving into the policy question is one for the board, just to again elaborate on history. So the PSC grant application process, the simplistic way I think about it in my head is it's kind of a three-legged stool of things that the Public Service Commission, any successful grant is going to have. It's going to have, one, the contribution from the internet service provider, the ISP. Two, it has to have a local municipal, that is a county, town, city, or village match. And it's going to have then if the PSC funds it, the PSC gives Public Service Commission dollars. So the idea, as I understood the conversation at the county board, was the forgivable loan component, the $140 some odd thousand, similar to what the same structure that was used for the Public Service Commission grant for Frontier, that would serve as the local match. The mechanism for the internet service provider portion of a grant, the idea, the discussion at Public Service or at the Broadband Task Force and ultimately at the board was, how can we get more internet service providers interested in submitting these grants? Was, hey, we will provide low interest loans to you, which would then give you the additional capital to meet your required internet service provider portion of a grant application, hopefully then to leverage that money from the Public Service Commission. So the Public Service Commission grant package that Bug Tussle put together was that three-legged stool. It was $140 some odd thousand was met by the local match from the county, as Chair Robinson referenced. The $3 million-ish balance was going to be met through, and that was Bug Tussle's component, was going to be met through Bug Tussle accessing a low-interest loan through the county, whether that was ARPA funds, whether that was the county lending its general fund dollars, which we had a lot of conversations about actually drafting a loan agreement to effectuate that. But ultimately, the path that kind of was solidified was this additional conduit and another conduit bond. What it gets you is the $3 million that the Public Service Commission has awarded to Bug Tussle. That's part of the overall bond issuance that we're talking about, that the board is going to consider, the Fond du Lac County bond issuance, $100+ million. I don't know if that helped or made it more murky, but the three-legged stool thing for me is kind of how I always think about those PSC.
I got Supervisor Robinson, then Supervisor Dickinson.
Again, we spent a lot of time going over what the mechanism would be for that loan, and the thought was, when they borrowed initially, the interest rate was 3.45 on the initial conduit bonding. Now we're looking 6-ish, depends on where the market is on a given day. But we were looking internally at whether or not we do that under the reserves, and I think we just felt as if that was not a prudent use of our reserves for a 30-year period of time. Not that the project wasn't meritorious, but then Bug Tussle approached us with the conduit bonding approach, and I think that was much preferable to us as we looked at it internally is to how do we go about doing this. The concern that I would have is on reneging that is that these are difficult to serve areas. between 2009, when we did the Eberts survey, and 2019, when the Design 9 study was served, we didn't address any of the needs in rural Marathon County. It wasn't until we had an infusion of dollars from the state and the feds that we began to address some of those areas. And we continue to have problems because they're looking at return on investment. And if profits can be made quicker, they're going to go to those areas. And we're dealing with large portions of the county that are underserved. We've got some maps which we'll share tonight. But we have 8,900-ish un- and underserved dwellings or places in Marathon County right now. And this will help with, this project helps with addressing some of those needs. And could we have been clearer in 2022? Yes, but I think we were thinking ARPA, other approaches, and we're bringing it back to the board for their approval.
Other questions, Supervisor Dickinson, or Vice Chair Dickinson next, please.
So the first question I have is, what's the resolution and what date were you reading from?
2122.
So resolution.
Resolution
R
2122.
2122, and the date of that meeting that was in March?
3:15.
Yeah, okay, cool. Yeah, I just want to be clear so I can go ahead and look at it. I know you read off of it. The other thing I would say is, it's not really a renege. I think generally speaking, the perception I think most people had is that we were agreeing to a certain concept related to using ARPA money. I think that's fair. That general conversation was moving that way with the limited dollars for certain things. So I just want to be clear on that. I think we're just kind of at this point now where we're trying to figure it out. So.
Other discussion? Supervisor Mirage, please.
Thank you, Chair Gibbs. On page 13 of the packet, where it's explaining the need for $8 million, if there is a need for $8 million in direct funding for improvements, why is the request $12 million? And then it goes down to say that it's capital intensive, you don't generate revenue immediately, you build a network, and revenue from customer subscription will then be used to make the bond payments. Then going on in the packet to page 71, where we go to the assumptions, the assumption is that 40% that subscriptions of 40% will then ramp up to 70% in 10 years. Curious how we got to those numbers. Did a survey go out? Do we have anybody signed up yet to actually say, when this happens, I am definitely going to be a subscriber? And then it goes on to say excess of 1,200 pre-subscriptions identified by the end of 2022. If that's the case at the end of 2022, that's 2 years ago, what is it now? So that's one question I have. Thank you.
Scott, if you want to try to address those questions,
Sure, I
please.
can try to address a number of different things, and please go back in case I missed something. As for the projections for the pro forma that's been provided, what we look at is the area and where you have the 40% up to 70%. That's a projection of customers that will happen over a period of time. When we look at our fiber and our wireless, when we look at the locations, what we also look at is how many of those locations already have service providers or not. A very large portion of the areas that we serve do not have providers. And so from a projection standpoint, we do a 40% ramping up to 70%. That pro forma has been looked at. We use similar numbers for other rural counties. In fact, I was just up in Price County this morning, and PMA had done an analysis of our pro forma and had basically said that, yes, the projections are within reason. They are conservative. Can you guarantee any of them? No. But I will throw one more item out there that people may not be aware of. when we look at Marathon County, if the board were to approve the final resolution and to approve to be part of this conduit bond issue, you are one of 10 counties that are part of this entire issue. So what could happen is if the projections go well and we are above what our projections are, everything is great, and in fact, that helps out the project as a whole. If, let's say, that Marathon County was lower than the projections, that risk is still also spread across the other 10 counties because the repayment of those bonds is to the bond holders, which encompasses all 10 counties and the projects within them. So with the pro forma and with the projections, we've always tried to be very conservative because we want to make sure that as we're doing this, that we're able to make those payments. Supervisor, you also asked a question. You started first at page 17 and then went to 71, so I know I missed something. Can you repeat that for me?
Page 17 was just your FAQs, basically. And
So-
then page 71 was going into the nitty-gritty of the whole agreement.
Right.
But
So-
I guess, sorry to interrupt you, but what I was really wanting to know is, I understand where you're saying your projections, but how are you getting those? So what, if I'm understanding you, no one's gone door to door and said, if we bring this to you, like if you build it, they will come. Kind of situation.
Currently, we have 165 signed contracts right now waiting for fiber to come live within Marathon County. I can tell you
That's
that for sure.
165 out of, was it 9,800 that are underserved or unserved?
No, that's 9,800 is the amount that's unserved or underserved in the county, remaining in the county. That is not specific to this project.
Correct. That is 165 of the OLT segments that we're starting to construct right now within Marathon County. You had also asked a question as to if $8 million is needed for the project, why is additional money needed as well? Very similar to this conduit bonding that we do for all of the counties, there's a certain amount, and it was the same with the first project. There's a certain amount of money that is there, but a portion of that money is set aside into a debt reserve fund, as well as a capital interest fund, as well as money to pay for the bonding. The capital interest fund helps to pay those interest payments for the first 5 years as we start to build the project and the fiber and get subscribers onto to being served. And then starting in year 5, Bug Tussle then makes both principal and interest payments. So the reason for the additional money is because it is a capital-intensive project and does not generate revenue on day one. The money that is in that capital interest fund helps to pay those interest payments for the first 5 years, and then we take over and make the payments.
Okay, thank you for that. I do have another question.
Go ahead, please.
Has anyone signed up tonight for public comment yet from the community? No?
Yes, yes, we do have.
Oh, you have public comment?
NTC, Chet Streep from NTC, their technology expert, in charge of technology at NTC, has
Okay.
signed up.
But nobody from the community, nobody that's in the 9,800 that are unserved currently are coming to speak about their,
Supervisor Robinson, do you want to address it? I am not aware of any.
I know we have a letter of support from the chamber. I believe the town of Harrison, town officials will be here tonight. And there may be others, but
I just find it curious when we have, for instance, the library. Anything about the library that we might supposedly decrease funding, which is all contrived, misinformation. However, we get inundated with emails and people are here lined up to do public comment. So I think it's curious that we haven't heard from a single constituent to come and do public comment to encourage us to vote in favor of this project. So I just wanted to make that comment.
Well, I will make a comment because I've had conversations with various constituents that haven't or don't, and I was one of them that did not and has not, up until about a year ago, did not have any option for broadband. None, other than my cell phone through Cellcom. It was spotty at best. I still have to stand outside sometimes with my finger wet in the wind to actually get cell service. Since then, Bug Tussle has put up the tower that's literally 1 mile away from my house, and I've hooked up to their service, and I have been very satisfied with their service. That being said, there's other areas, but since that time, the RDOF has build out from Charter has come through, and now have fiber in front of my home. But I have not yet moved to fiber, even though potentially the speed would be recordable higher. I have no significant need to increase that speed versus the cost that I'm currently paying through Bug Tussle. But I will tell you that I've had various individuals in my jurisdiction, in my district, that do not have, in fact, up in the town of Rib Falls, there's significant areas up there. And then you get closer, just outside of my area, into the Hamburg area, where they have come without cell service, without the ability to dial 911 because of cell service. That has been improved by, in fact, Bug Tussle's tower that they put in the area up there. So I understand that there isn't people knocking down the door, but I do know that we are charged with providing what is said over there, and that is the healthiest, safest, and most prosperous county in the state. Supervisor Jacobson, please.
I just want to be clear. So this is we are voting on this on Tuesday. I just had thought that when this came through for initial input, so to speak, I think in July. I thought it was going to be September, but are we just that was a projected, and now we just kind of got on top of the bond issuance faster?
I think there's potential. Well,
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Supervisor, from a process standpoint, we prefer to have final resolutions passed or determined within August, which provides us then the final time to get all final documents with the T's crossed and the I's dotted to then put those bonds out to the market in September. So that's why we need that's why we're looking for the approval in August.
and at this point, how many counties are involved in this initial offering?
In this initial offering, we have 10 counties, including Marathon County. If all counties approve the final resolution, that will be a bond offering issued by Fond du Lac County in the amount of $109 million. We've had previous, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, we've had previous bond offerings in the amount of 72, 58, and 90.
And of that 109, how many counties have, I know of one county that potentially has approved already. I've seen an email that one of the counties already, of the counties this initial offering, or this specific $109 million offering, one county has approved, and there's several that are looking at the approval potential on the 20th. Is that correct?
Correct. We have roughly 5 different county boards. It may even be 5 different county boards that will be considering the final resolution on August 20th. And until laws allow for human cloning, we will not be able to attend all of those county board meetings. But we feel very confident that the majority we're hoping all, but the majority of those counties will approve that final resolution.
Other discussion? Supervisor Raybeck, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to say that I think it was 2019 that I was kind of contacted by a few people, my daughter being one of them, and said they weren't able to dial 911. Some of her neighbors had dialed 911, and they ended up dropping the call. They ended up spending the police had to come out to their place because that 911 call that's dropped, you've got to follow up on it. So that's what they did. So it was a real problem back then. From now on, I think now it's better. I don't know if it's 100% yet, but it's better. At least when I call my daughter now, she answers the phone, so that helps mostly. So,
Supervisor Robinson?
I'd like to try to address Supervisor Marash's comment relative to not getting calls. You're probably not going to get calls in your district. You're in the city where you have TDS, you have charter, there are options. We're trying to deal with the parts of the county that don't have those options. There isn't a week that goes by where I don't get a phone call from someone, whether it's Tony Amernick from Supervisor Boots's district or a lot of people on the western side of the county. When's it coming? We need it. But I think they're relying on the county board, working with Bug Tussle, working with Charter, working with Serenity, working with others to get it done. But there is a clear need for this, not necessarily in the urban areas where you've got, now Frontier is in laying fiber in the city, but they're not laying fiber in the town of Harrison and the town of Berlin and many of the other communities that need the service. We could rally them. We didn't think that was material. I know that Supervisor Dickinson at one time had done a lot of work with his constituents to try to identify who was underserved, and I think we've gathered that information. They're relying on us to do what's right.
Other discussions? Supervisor Jacobson, please.
Does this end up going to the county board if it doesn't get out of exec?
It has been moved by HR Finance. I think it's also been moved by Infrastructure. So it will go to the full board. It's going to be at the board tonight. And it'll be at the board tonight. So yes, it's going to be to the full board.
Regardless of what exec does?
Correct.
Okay.
Other Supervisor, Vice Chair Dickinson, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'll be, you mentioned, Supervisor Robinson mentioned, initially when we went through this, I reached out to a lot of people I work with, people who are friends, social media, a lot of responses. People were very interested sharing addresses, where they fit, whether they're underserved, not served, whatever it might have been. After that initial push, I haven't received anything. I'm still communicating to my constituents in the 5 townships that I represent, and people are not reaching out. People in the meetings, when I work with people in the meetings, they're not having video cut out, audio cut out, to the same degree maybe they had before. Now, that could be part of this project, has helped. It could be other things. Maybe they've chosen another avenue. It could be RDOF or whatever it might have been. So I do want to mention that, and I would say, in similar things in support of Supervisor Marash, is that when people are significantly interested, they do show up, whether it be ATV, UTV, something we had in infrastructure for a while, they will significantly show up. The reason they're not showing up now, I have no idea. Maybe it's because they have bad internet, I don't know, and they're not able to see our meetings, just being kind of glib about that. But I don't know why people aren't showing up. Maybe they think it's done, that we're just going to move forward, or maybe they think it's over with anyway, and they're not going to fight it anymore. I would be interested to know, we talk about 911 calls, like what are our statistics on dropped calls? one of the questions I had asked in one of the other meetings was related to that, is how has it improved? We had that discussion, I think it was either HR finance or infrastructure, and there was some anecdotal evidence that things have improved, but I don't have any statistics on drop 911 calls to know if this is truly significant. And it isn't to doubt anyone, but again, where we are right now. So I'm on the fence about this. I've spoken with Supervisor Robinson about this. In all honesty, I consider, the last loop fiber is from Stratford through into Mosinee, which affects my area to some degree, and so I'm trying to figure out what is the balance in that, if there is one. I will say this though. If we, and I'll kind of push back a little bit on this, when we look back at that resolution, when we're talking about the funds, there's two statements in there that I think really reject this thought that somehow we have already committed. Whereas these recommended loans would be available to applicants through American Rescue Plan Act funds. ARPA, well, we don't have that. Now, therefore, it be resolved that these recommended loans are authorized through ARPA funds. So really, in that regard, the resolution it's not the same. It doesn't fit in this particular circumstance. It doesn't mean we can't move forward with the same mindset to find other ways to do it. But I do want to point that out, and that's really where I am with it, and I appreciate everybody else's comments.
Scott, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Supervisor Dickinson, I agree with you on a number of points that when I was with Kewaunee County, it was very difficult at times to ascertain what the level of interest was at times regarding broadband, whether that be towers, whether that be fiber. A lot of it was very anecdotal. You would hear a few people, which would be the squeaky wheels, but most of the other people would just how do I want to say, silently suffer the inability of being able to stream services or having things glitch when their teenage kids came home from school and decided to stream videos and game all at the same time. As for the funding, again, that is a matter of policy for the board. The part that we look at from the bug tussle standpoint is we would like to finish the two projects that we're looking at for Marathon County. One with Leather Camp that we're in there right now. We're moving forward with the work and wanting to do that because that was part of the grant agreement that we agreed with the PSC to do this project, under the understanding that there would also be, in essence, a $3 million local match to help do that project. As for the completion of the county project, I would be remiss if I didn't say that that was a fault of ours. And what we're asking for is to be able to complete that project. And as I've said numerous times, this is not money that is not given back to Marathon County. This is not money that once the bonds have been issued, that I then come in and go talk to Lance and say, I'd like my $12 million check, please, because that's not how it works. What happens is we do the work, we submit those invoices to county staff for verification and approval, and then we are reimbursed for that work that we have completed. And so we know that we have made mistakes. We want to rectify them, and we don't want to walk away. We want to finish what we've started. Hopefully that's answered some of those questions.
Supervisor Boots, please.
Yeah, so I guess I'd like to try to keep it brief, but town of Texas, I can go through the townships that surround me, and Supervisor Ritter and I put out a couple townships, but I can tell you Texas, Hewitt, Clover, Harrison, Wausau townships, terribly underserved, both cell and broadband. If you want people at a meeting, I can put it out on the Town of Texas website because it's on there pretty much every other week about when are we getting our broadband. I can get people at a meeting. So I don't think I need to do that because for what Supervisor Robinson said earlier, I've been directing him to Supervisor Robinson. Like, he's in charge of this task force. Please reach out to him. He would have the latest and greatest answers. We are really, really sad out here. Drop calls. I can tell you that I've talked to several people on this board while I'm driving home from a meeting and drop calls on my way home, not even halfway home. Get out of Riverview, you get about to, if you know the area, Supervisor Marsh told her I'm talking about, you go on 6th Street, you get out to about Highway W to WW, and you start dropping calls. And it's all the way till you get anywhere out here. And it's just, depending on what valley you're in, you're going to lose it. So yeah, we're really underserved, and we talked about equity versus equality and things like that in the past. Well, we don't even want to be equal. Even if we had some sort of reliable service, it would be great. So yeah, I know for a fact that my constituents, this is an easy yes vote because they're struggling with what's going on with this. We put stuff in, but they're not getting the services yet. So it's a weekly thing. So I'll leave it at that. I mean, I'll see how it goes on tonight at the meeting at 6, but I'll be more than happy to put something out there saying we don't really need to, nobody's showing up, so it must not be an issue. I can definitely bring people. So that's it.
Well, I guess I would be remiss if I didn't speak about my in-laws who live literally about 1 mile, maybe a little bit more, 1.25 miles from Supervisor Boots' residence. And I can go out there right now today, and I can guarantee you will have 0 bars on your cell phone. And on top of that, you will have literally no options for broadband. None. 0. And it's from that point, from Supervisor Boots' house all the way north to the county line, there's nothing. Literally, there's nothing. So we can talk about how there's not a need, or we're not seeing the people in here. I like Supervisor Boots. I can tell you if that call went out to actually inundate this board with people commenting about how broadband is actually needed and or cell service expanded, that would happen. But other discussion. Supervisor Marash.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was a previous resident of the town of Wausau and have firsthand experience of the lack of good internet out there. We had to do several different things like satellite, had to have the right view of Mosinee Hill, and then the trees grew too much or that went down. I'm completely aware of that. And I understand. My only point in what I said was, usually we hear from people by now. That was my point. I'm not saying there aren't people that don't feel strongly about this. Clearly there are. Also, I live in town now, but we have one option for internet. And our internet isn't that great because TDS was going to come down, and they came and they went door to door and got subscribers. You signed up ahead of time, and then they never came. Because why? Too rocky. So I understand all these things. I'm just curious if we have any data for these people in the rural districts. Do we have any data at all about any of them that do they subscribe to satellite service? Because that's what we had to do. And when satellite service didn't work, then we had to go to cell service and had a hotspot. And we still use that hotspot in another rural location in Vilas County. So I'm just curious if we have any data at all about how many people maybe have satellite, how many are using Starlink, how many are using a hotspot. Do we have anything like that? Because I'm not saying this isn't necessary. I'm just not sure that, I don't know about the way how this whole thing went down. And I'm also concerned about the risks. There's a page full of risks. On page 55 of the packet, there's a page full of risks. And I don't want to get into a position again where we say, yeah, we'll sign on and we'll do this $12 million, and then they come back again because of the risks and say, well, you know, the more rock, ran into more rock, or whatever risk we want to use on this whole list. So those are my comments.
Supervisor Drabeck, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you say that the 12 million would be the exact amount? I mean, it wouldn't be more than that then? Can you say that?
We are not asking to exceed $12 million. $12 million is to complete the Leather Camp project as well as to complete the county project. If we come back a third time, shame on us. And I can't believe I'm saying this, I would tell you to tell us no.
All right, thank you. The other thing, Mr. Chair, I was wondering, during the meeting that we had with the infrastructure when we kind of started this quite a while ago, my daughter came in and gave a presentation of how they couldn't talk on the phone or anything. And her neighbor came in and she was the one that had the 911 problem. How many others had 911 issues, I do not know. But they had several dropped calls on that. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Aaron, you had something to provide?
Hi, I'm Erin Andrews, the broadband coordinator. I just wanted to speak about the question of data in the county about options for internet. We know, so what we use for that data is information from the PSC that indicates how many addresses in this county have no or very poor internet service. And we are following PSC guidelines, and that equals about 9,000 at this time. They don't provide data of who subscribes to satellite services. I can speak to the cost of satellite, of which some of you are probably familiar. It is significantly more expensive than fiber, or licensed fixed wireless. So I think it's a $600 purchase of hardware plus installation costs plus $120 a month. And that's for Starlink, which is the most reliable. I've spoken to other residents who use other satellite and have found it insufficient, but that's the one, those who have Starlink are satisfied with it, but they acknowledge it's extremely expensive. The other avenues for high-speed internet access tend to be more affordable. Fiber is as fast, as reliable, and less expensive. So while I don't have PSC data on, at this time, I don't have PSC data on Starlink subscribers or satellite subscribers, I can say that at the town meetings that we attend, it's an option, but a lot of people find that unaffordable.
Other discussion? Another discussion?
Supervisor Booth.
Supervisor Boots, please.
Yeah, just one more thing. Yes, I went to satellite, and then we had to get rid of satellite because during COVID, kids had to study from home. It would bog it down, so we couldn't even use it. Then we were told to go to Hewitt, Texas school and go to the parking lot for 8 hours and have our kids go there so that we would have reliable service. I mean, this is a huge issue, and I can completely understand what Supervisor Marash said. I know she understands the whole thing. I get it, and we just don't want to throw money at a problem. But we've started the process already. And just in my mind, it makes no sense to stop midway through the process. And our residents, the residents around me have been asking, when are we finishing this? That has been the big push, I guess. So, I mean, I'm going to watch closely, like I said, tonight, hear what people have to say. And then, I mean, I will, talking more possibly on Tuesday, depending on how the meeting goes tonight. But yeah, just so everyone knows, I mean, I know my residents are watching this closely. Now, yeah, typically they do show up for meetings, but I will also say when they think it's handled, they think it's handled. And I think they think it's handled at this point. They don't think we're going to just stop doing what we're doing. So, yeah, that's all I had. Thank you.
Other discussion? Supervisor Drabeck, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to say, yeah, we have Starlink, and it's $120 a month. And plus the equipment, at that time when we bought it was $500. I don't know if it went up, probably went up, but yeah, so verifying that it's truth, yeah.
Other discussion? Vice Chair Dickinson.
So you mentioned, Aaron, that there were 9,000 unserved, underserved, based upon the data. But I assume we have no data from those 9,000 homes, whether they're okay with that at being underserved. Right, we don't have any data on that. We don't have any data on the people who are, say, unserved, whether they want to be served or not, or whether they're fine with their cell phones, right?
No, I don't have data except anecdotal that I haven't met a single person who is satisfied with their service that when they are considered unserved or underserved when I've met people in the county. But I don't have data on that, no.
Okay, because I can say, just in that regard, having a home of 6 and 7, varying on the time of year, my children will say we are unserved with our Charter spectrum, because sometimes we have to, turn off turn off the router. We have to reset the router or something like that, or it rained and there was a little bit of an issue with that. I'm not trying to be funny about it. I guess I am a little bit. The thought is, I think there are some people, and we mentioned this in the infrastructure meeting, there are some people who choose to be in a certain place of the county without certain things, expecting that their road is going to be gravel and it's not going to be tar. And I made the joke about chip seal, which I will always make joke about chip seal, because chip seal is terrible. But it's that kind of thing. They choose to live out in the country, and then they decide if they aren't served a certain way, they're okay with perhaps relocating or find other methods. So I just want to be a little bit careful in kind of the idea that this is going to be the magical serve all, fix this, this is going to come around, we're going to fix this last section, we're going to put up these extra couple towers, because right now we do have, if you look at the chart, there are many towers. How many towers are up already?
16.
16. So we are served, we have served a great amount of people. People are getting that already. They have the fiber in place. And a lot of those are in the locations maybe that we've been talking about. Again, there's just these 2 sections that we're talking about. We're just talking about that fiber, that final line, and then we're talking about the additional few towers and then this leather camp. So I'm just trying to put it a little into perspective. I don't want to carry on about it because I know it's going to be discussed at the county board, but I'm just trying to put a perspective around it to make sure that we, this isn't like we're going to build the interstate to everybody's home.
Scott, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You're absolutely right, Supervisor Dickinson, in that there are always going to be certain people that choose not to have internet, choose not to have a cell phone, choose not to have any certain type of technology. I would never disagree with that statement because we know that there are those cases. But I also would not want to have those exceptions overcloud the rule, which is that there is a vast majority of people that are unsatisfied with their current service and would like improved service. When I was county administrator, the big thing that we looked at from the large standpoint is at the end of the day, when the supervisors looked to me and asked me what my recommendation is, I recommended that we move forward with the project. And there was a few different reasons why. One is that at the end of the day, we get all of our money back, plus interest, and we have improved internet access. We have gained 48 strands of fiber. We have created more foundational infrastructure for our county to continue to expand access throughout the county. And we can do that with this project. And how Bug Tussle was different than all the other providers that we had talked to is that Bug Tussle was the only one that had said, if you loan us the money, we will pay it back plus interest.
I can say that, obviously, when you look at the other entities the other ISPs that have actually put in infrastructure in the rural community, in most cases, it's because they've had federal grants or state grants, whether it be RDOF, whether it be PSC. That's how they had direct granting funding, where Bug Tussle has, and in their other projects that they have done, in the Fond du Lac County area. The project, one of the oldest projects that Bug Tussle has in place, they have never once missed a payment. And that project is, Scott, help me, correct me if I'm wrong, if it's not 12 years old, it's 10 years old.
The very first bonding project we did in Fond du Lac was 2012, and that is already paid and resolved and closed. We've done other bonding projects starting in 2020, and you are correct that there is not a single payment that we have missed. I know in some counties there is concern about the risk, and there's been a focus on what would be considered the worst case scenario. And what we have tried to do through this process is provide almost 3 layers of protection. The first is Bug Tussle needs to make the payments. And then if Bug Tussle doesn't make the payments, then Hilbert makes the payments. We've also included trying to get bond insurance, which also provides a layer of some security. And so what we've tried to do as much as possible is to make this as minimized. I can't say risk-free, because that all capital projects have risk, all of them. Whether you're building a jail, building a road, there are the possibility of cost overruns, there are a possibility of your contractor leaving you high and dry, there's all of that. So there's always risks. But what we've tried to do in this process is provide those layers of protection to make it extremely difficult that Bug Tussle would not make their payments, and that the county would therefore be affected from that. And again, when we think about this, the payments are for all 10 counties. It's not just for Marathon. So again, all of that risk is spread across all of the participating counties.
Other discussion? Supervisor Robinson, please.
I'd just like to try to address the issue of survey data. If you're old like me, you've gone through the National Association of Counties Test It program, where we were trying to gather information. The only thing that gathered was speed. It was a speed test. Relayed the data, and you can download it. Then we went with GeoPartners through the Area Economic Development Associations and the North Central Wisconsin Regional Planning Commission to gather data. But again, that was relatively limited in what information was collected, location, and speed. The Wisconsin Public Service Commission had a more elaborate survey mechanism called WISER. It's a self-reporting system, but it's limited because you need the internet in which to participate in the survey. But that information was used to, I think, drive some of the mapping. And when an underserved property is a property that has less than 25.3 speed, and unserved is 110, 100 down, or 120 up. The rate of utilization of broadband capacity is growing by about 30% a year. And so what the federal government and what the state did is that they sort of set a minimum of 100 megabytes per second down, and a symmetrical up. There's some concerns about latency, so you don't have those lapses between somebody speaking and it showing up. But that's the standard. That's the unmet is less than 25.3, or unserved, and the underserved is at 120. And they're trying to future-proof it, making that investment in dealing with it. There are a number of satellite companies, HughesNet, there's Starlink, there are a number of fixed, of Wi-Fi services, Air Runner, NetPros, and Bug Tussle has that through their towers. They're prone to interruptions. Many of them are prone for interruptions due to weather, in line of sight, and other things. But the feds and the state have set standards, and we're trying to meet those and respond to those. And in some cases, there's just not the data isn't available to answer some of those questions, but there have been repeated efforts to try to collect that information and drive it. The 9,000, approximately 9,000, comes from looking at who's providing service in certain areas. That's a internet service provider generated or driven map. The internet service providers provide information relative to their service area. There is a challenge process. So if people say they claim that they are giving me X service, but they're not, and there are challenges, we've challenged some of the data to make sure that it's eligible for the broadband equity assistance program or deployment, the BEAD program, because if they're not on the map, they're not eligible. So we've been working closely with the PSC and others to make sure that's as accurate as possible. But they haven't done the drill down on many of the questions that you're asking.
Other discussion? Supervisor Raybeck, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think this is my third time, right? The last time we were discussing some of this at the board level there, some people are concerned about the time limit and that this stuff would be obsolete before it got to the end of it. My son, he's a computer engineer, and he says probably not, but I just want to know your input on that.
Absolutely. I know there's a concern about that with regards to the towers and the fiber, as well as the equipment that's at the end of those fiber optic cables, as well as the equipment that's on the towers. The towers and the fiber themselves will last for decades, well past 30 years. In fact, many of you see towers that have been up for your whole lives. So in that respect, we see the towers as lasting for decades beyond the 30 years. As for the fiber optic cable, I believe that your IT director, Mr. Klein, had said that they've been operating cable well in excess of 30 years plus. I'll be honest, until there's a technology that allows us to go faster than the speed of light, I think that fiber optic cable will still be useful. The question regarding equipment, whether on the towers or at the ends of the fiber optic cable, those do have shorter shelf lives, and there's a specific reason for that. The reason comes to that as technology improves, we're able to provide better service, no different than when you looked at the processing chip for computers. I come from an age when the Commodore 64 was the top of the line, and now people would just laugh at that. We know that as technology improves, that the need for better equipment to transmit that data needs to be done. Bug Tussle determines that that is a maintenance issue, and since we own the towers and we own the fiber, we will replace that equipment to make sure that it is upgraded, and that is done at no cost to the county because that is an operating cost that helps us to provide the best service that we can to our customers.
Okay, other discussion? Other discussion? If not, what is your pleasure? Supervisor Robinson.
I would move that we advance the final resolution to the county board.
Okay, there's a motion to move the final resolution regarding the unconditional county guarantee for its pro rata share of the intergovernmental agreement and the taxable revenue bond financing for Bug Tussle 2 LLC project. Is there a second? Second by Supervisor Raybeck. Is there any further discussion? Any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor of that motion to approve and move to the full board for its consideration the final resolution regarding the unconditional county guarantee of its pro rata share intergovernmental agreement and taxable revenue bond financing for Bug Tussle 2 LLC project, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
Motion is carried. but is not unanimous. Moving on to discussion and potential education items for the full board. Review of the 2024 second quarter budget to actual reports for departments of oversight. Administrator Leonard, anything that you want to add to those financials that are in the packet?
Nothing on my end. If anyone has any questions, I will certainly look into them and report back at your next meeting.
Okay. Any other discussion on those items? Supervisor Robinson, please. I'm sorry.
Before we move on, are you dealing with 7A? Educational items?
Discussion of potential education items for the full board. Is there any items there? Supervisor Robinson, please.
I think it would be helpful if we could get an update sometime this fall on where Wisconsin Counties Association is from a legislative priority perspective as we approach both the budget and as we deal with legislators when they're out of session. If we can, might help us communicate with them and have a better understanding of what those priorities are and how it might change some of our policies, practices, or funding.
Okay, so WCA did, just maybe an announcement, WCA board did meet last Friday and finalized its recommendations for its priorities. And they also put three themes, three probably items of emphasis, one being court funding, two being mental health, and I'll get the third one, but I'll also get you the complete list of items that the WCA board has moved forward with as far as priorities on agenda items. Absolutely. Any other discussion of potential educational items for the full board? Okay. And any questions or concerns on item 7B, review of the 2024 second quarter? Supervisor Marash, please.
Yeah, I would like to request that we have a child caring presentation for the full board. We have a possible resolution coming forward, and I would like Kelly Borchert to present her presentation she gave to the executive committee, or to the EED committee.
Do you want that to go to the board at the same time as the resolution from the EEC?
Yes, so
EEDC,
or September.
September? Okay. Kelly. All right, so noted. Any other discussion? Supervisor Jacobson, please.
Just a question on what you had mentioned with legislative priorities and the advocating for additional court funding. Within that, is there a look at advocating for additional funding for the public defender's office at the state level? Because I know that at our last public safety committee meeting, it was very helpful when Judge Strasser was there with Judicare to talk about. I think they're down to like 3 attorneys, private attorneys outside the PD's office actually willing to take the cases. And I really do strongly believe that is a bottleneck in the system that's causing our jail to be full. And then we put people back on the street on signature bond. It's not so much that we don't have the judges to prosecute. We just don't have the PDs to provide the constitutional rights. So it was really enlightening when he did that. And I mentioned that as to the backlog in the system. So.
Yeah, I think I'll comment first off. I think WCA has a study group that's made up of execs and admins, and they are doing a deep dive into the total complexity and the funding of the judicial system and where the shortfalls are, and that's part of this discussion. And so where is the bottleneck? So your point is spot on. where are the bottlenecks? Because if the bottleneck is the criminal defense lawyers and the and that's leading to jail overcrowding or delay in courts. We had a discussion at the CJCC exec committee this morning about some of the opportunities we have as far as when they become city or county appointment for defense attorneys. Administrator Leonard, you had something to add?
I was going to say the same thing, and I actually serve on that group for WCA, so there should be a Wisconsin Counties Association presentation on court funding as a top priority, but you're absolutely right. One of the things they're looking at is state public defender's office and then just generally defense counsel availability. Another big one that people haven't talked a lot about is interpreters, but we can, I think technically your agenda item is items for future board presentations, so yes, we can get that on a future board presentation.
Thanks.
And I think the other thing is, I think there's also going to be and is a discussion on court funding at the WC annual conference as far as a breakout session. Okay, other items. Seeing none, committee members are, we've already probably gone through part of that. Committee members are asked to bring ideas of future discussion. Next meeting is scheduled for Thursday, September 19th at 3 p.m. And we are down to item number 9. What is your pleasure? Motion by Supervisor Jacobson and second by Vice Chair Dickinson to adjourn. All those in favor of adjournment signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Opposed? We stand adjourned. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
I think I'm going to have to start forwarding phone calls.